This TED Talk features robot ethicist Kate Darling, recorded live at TED Salon Samsung 2018.
Hey there, I'm Chris Anderson, the guy who gets to run TED. We've just launched a new podcast called The TED Interview, where I get to sit down with iconic TED speakers to dive deeper into their ideas. In our first episode, a conversation with the iconic author Elizabeth Gilbert, all of us want to be creative in some way. Liz Gilbert is astonishingly eloquent about how that creativity can be inspired.
You know, I think everybody thinks that creativity comes in lightning strikes, but I think it comes in whispers.
Please join me for the TED Interview, wherever you listen.
There was a day about 10 years ago when I asked a friend to hold a baby dinosaur robot upside down. It was this toy called a Pleo that I had ordered, and I was really excited about it because I've always loved robots. And this one has really cool technical features. It had motors and touch sensors, and it had an infrared camera. And one of the things it had was a tilt sensor, so it knew what direction it was facing. And when you held it upside down, it would start to cry. And I thought this was super cool, so I was showing it off to my friend. And I said, ooh, hold it up by the tail, see what it does. So we're watching the theatrics of this robot struggle and cry out. And after a few seconds, it starts to bother me a little. And I said, okay, that's enough now. Let's put him back down. And then I pet the robot to make it stop crying. And that was kind of a weird experience for me. For one thing, I wasn't the most maternal person at the time. Although since then I've become a mother 9 months ago, and I've learned that babies also squirm when you hold them upside down. But my response to this robot was also interesting because I knew exactly how this machine worked, and yet I still felt compelled to be kind to it. And that observation sparked a curiosity that I've spent the past decade pursuing. Why did I comfort this robot? And one of the things I discovered was that my treatment of this machine was more than just an awkward moment in my living room. That in a world where we're increasingly integrating robots into our lives, an instinct like that might actually have consequences. Because the first thing that I discovered is that it's not just me. In 2007, the Washington Post reported that the United States military was testing this robot that diffused landmines. And the way it worked was it was shaped like a stick insect, and it would walk around a minefield on its legs. And every time it stepped on a mine, one of the legs would blow up, and it would continue on the other legs to blow up more mines. And the colonel who is in charge of this testing exercise ends up calling it off because he says it's too inhumane to watch this damaged robot drag itself along the minefield. Now, what would cause a hardened military officer and someone like myself to have this response to robots? Well, of course, we're primed by science fiction and pop culture to really want to personify these things. But it goes a little bit deeper than that. It turns out that we're biologically hardwired to project intent and life onto any movement in our physical space that seems autonomous to us. So people will treat all sorts of robots like they're alive. These bomb disposal units get names. They get medals of honor. They've had funerals for them with gun salutes. And research shows that we do this even with very simple household robots, like the Roomba vacuum cleaner. Just a disc that roams around your floor to clean it, but just the fact that it's moving around on its own will cause people to name the Roomba and feel bad for the Roomba when it gets stuck under the couch. And we can design robots specifically to evoke this response using eyes and faces or movements that people automatically, subconsciously associate with states of mind. And there's an entire body of research called human-robot interaction that really shows how well this works. So, for example, researchers at Stanford University found out that it makes people really uncomfortable when you ask them to touch a robot's private parts. So from this, but from many other studies, we know that people respond to the cues given to them by these lifelike machines, even if they know that they're not real. Now, we're headed towards a world where robots are everywhere. Robotic technology is moving out from behind factory walls. It's entering workplaces, households. And as these machines that can sense and make autonomous decisions and learn enter into these shared spaces, I think that maybe the best analogy we have for this is our relationship with animals. Thousands of years ago, we started to domesticate animals, and we trained them for work and weaponry and companionship. And throughout history, we've treated some animals like tools or like products, and other animals we've treated with kindness, and we've given a place in society as our companions. I think it's plausible we might start to integrate robots in similar ways. And sure, animals are alive. Robots are not. And I can tell you from working with roboticists that we're pretty far away from developing robots that can feel anything. But we feel for them. And that matters because if we're trying to integrate robots into these shared spaces, we need to understand that people will treat them differently than other devices. And that in some cases, for example, the case of a soldier who becomes emotionally attached to the robot that they work with, that can be anything from inefficient to dangerous. But in other cases, it can actually be useful to foster this emotional connection to robots. We're already seeing some great use cases. For example, robots working with autistic children to engage them in ways that we haven't seen previously. Or robots working with teachers to engage kids in learning with new results. And it's not just for kids. Early studies show that robots can help doctors and patients in healthcare settings. This is the Paro baby seal robot. It's used in nursing homes and with dementia patients. It's been around for a while. And I remember years ago being at a party and telling someone about this robot, and her response was, "Oh my gosh, that's horrible. I can't believe we're giving people robots instead of human care." And this is a really common response, and I think it's absolutely correct, because that would be terrible. But in this case, it's not what this robot replaces.